Started. So I'm calling the meeting of the Historic Resources Committee to order. First off, I'd just like to see if anybody has any changes to the minutes from our last meeting. It was helter-skelter with me joining from California and Rhonda gratefully leading the meeting as I cut in and out. So thank you, Brian, for the minutes. Did anybody have any changes to the meeting notes? Okay, can I have a first to accept the meeting? Okay, and do we have a second? Do we have a second? Brian, okay, thanks, Chris. All right, and all right, so do a vote to approve the meeting minutes? All in favor, say aye. 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 All opposed? Okay. All right, great. I'm going to just hit a couple items in the chair's report and then stop and move on to our demolition reviews. First off, I just want to remind everybody that our next meeting is going to be November 18th at 4 p.m. So we are changing the time of our meeting. It will be the second Tuesday of each month. Sorry, it's Monday. Second Monday, that's hard to get used to. At 4 o'clock so that we can get out of the daylight hours. But our next meeting happens to fall on a holiday, so it's going to be 1 week later on the 18th. I think everyone has taken their member oaths with Katrina, but if they have not, please duck in there. Yes, you do. Yes. In fact, you now have to leave the meeting. And we'll get into discussing the election table staffing and what we kind of want to do there. But I think this is a good time before we get into lengthy discussions on other issues to look at the review of the two properties on High Street. And we'll just go in numerical order. And as a reminder, this is per town code. And I could recite the number, but I won't.
It's right here.
All right, 290-5.2.
Right.
So the Historic Resources Committee is part of the review process as we look at a 120-day delay potentially. And Shanley is here representing planning. Gratefully, thank you.
Thank you.
So looking first at the application at 9 High Street, are the applicants here or their representatives?
Yeah.
Great. If you could introduce yourself and get on a mic and maybe just give us an overview of the project.
I'll sit here. Sure, John will have to squeeze himself in. So hi, I'm Meg Barclay, Schultz and Barclay Architecture. This is John Schultz. Oh, he can share the mic. Good idea. Okay. Also, Schultz and Barclay Architecture. And the reason why we were here is our clients, Andrew and Maria Wisdom, have been restoring 9 High Street, the house. You've probably all seen that going on for a year now. It started last October. And as part of the restoration process, they also wanted to have the carriage house as a functioning thing. And we took a good look at it, and the foundation of the building is failing. And then the insides have had just strange things done to it over the years. And there's not a lot there. And the math sort of is, it would be better to tear it down and essentially recreate something similar than it would be to try and fix it. So we are here hoping that to get your blessing to do this, essentially. I mean, there probably would not be any change to the property until next spring, because we still need to really design something and go through the whole ZBA process, because the building is currently like half in and half out of the shoreland setback for the stream that runs down the side of the property. So there's that, but we just wanted to alert everyone. I did bring sketches and a site plan if people are interested, though I know that's not officially part of this process. I thought people might be curious about the direction it was headed.
Absolutely. Is that something you can distribute while you're talking?
Yes,
or-
absolutely. And I made 8 copies, and I don't know if there'll be enough or if you'll want to share. So the one that is, I'll send them in 2 directions. I don't know if I've divided this evenly, but on the site plan, you'll be able to see there's the dashed outline of where the building is now, and it's actually crooked to the house. And we have in your packet, you probably, my theory of why it's crooked to the house, because I believe it was a pre-existing building that they added onto. And the idea is the new thing that's sketched out would be squared up to the house. And that's what you can see on the site plan. Sure. So do you see, so there's the orange square where the carriage house is. And if you see sort of overlaid on that orange square, there's a dashed outline that's about 10 degrees off.
Yes.
That's the old carriage house, or the one that exists now is kind of 10 degrees offset from the house. And I think that there was an old barn there that they simply added to, but when they built the house, they're like, well, we're building the house square to the street. And the carriage house, let the chips fall where they may, so to speak, you know?
What this does is it creates more symmetry. So when it's squared up with the house, and then you look down the side there, the landscape architects have the court in front of that. Now it comes straight into the door. It just looks, and it also provides better room between the carriage house and the main building to get to the courtyard area that's under landscape design.
Great, thank you.
And the way this all came up was the landscape architects were working on the design. And although the carriage house renovation wasn't in this first phase of fixing the house, everyone was like, well, we need to decide what's going to happen here in order to really flesh out the landscape design. So that's why we're here before you, to find out, you know, what we can and can't do, sort of thing.
Okay, great. So here's how I'd like to proceed if that's kind of your overview.
Yep.
I have a couple questions, and then I'd like members to chime in with much smarter questions, and then we'll open up to public comment and questions. So that's how we're going to kind of do this. So you mentioned a monetary, differential between the two things, and without getting into specific dollars or anything like that, can you give any sense of, we're talking about a huge disparity in restoration versus demolition?
We don't know because we don't have hard and fast designs of like the building one way versus the building the other way, because it would be spending a lot of the client's money to like come up with the plan of how to fix it if in fact you're not going to fix it. But our intuitive sense of having done a lot of these things is, at the best, it's a wash one way or the other, but that you will get a much better building, both structurally, because the building's understructured right now. There's cracking, joists, the foundation's failing, like all these things would have to be repaired. And you'll get a better insulation package, which would bring it up to our new state insulation code if you started from scratch. Because right now, for instance, the roof rafters are only 6 inches deep, which is, it's a really big
Undersized.
roof.
Which is why the walls are
It's all
doing
like
this.
this.
I
So,
understand.
And so to put the same money into renovating it, you will not get as good a product as if you rebuild it completely with a good foundation and a good frame.
Understood. Great. So one of the things that's distinctive about the property is that it is one of the rare Queen Anne's in the historic district. So I understand you're removing the tower element, which is one of the kind of features of a Queen Anne. So my question is, why is the tower element being removed, and what will be done to preserve the character of Queen Anne with the rebuild of the carriage house?
Great question. So the house The main house was originally much smaller, and I don't know if you've looked at the historic photograph, but you can see that it was smaller and it got added to on the north, the Belfast end. And the adding to it sort of like moved the house in front of the tower. And it now, to us, feels extremely awkward to have this tower kind of right up against the back of the building. And also, it seems like 2 towers are a lot of towers, just from an aesthetic point of view, and that is it necessary to have a tower that doesn't really have a function? That tower doesn't really have a function other than there's a stair in it. And we would be relocating the stair. And for the Queen Anne detailing, what the house has, if you look at it, is it's mostly clapboards, and then at a certain point it changes to wood shingles. And so our concept is there's no barn door on it now because the barn door was long ago removed to turn it into apartments, is to recreate a barn door on the front, have a trim band at the level between, the first and second floor, and then to have the shingles come down and have the shingle flare that is very typical of Queen Anne going around, but to keep the building simple as a, carriage house would have been, so that it's not competing for your attention with the house.
So in terms of attention, one of the ideas of historic preservation, and as the town hopefully moves forward to a preservation code, one of the things is maintaining streetscape is one of the major initiatives. So I'm curious, what is the kind of presence of the carriage house in terms of streetscape on High Street and in the new design?
So I believe in your packet, I took a photo from across the street, and
Yeah.
because the carriage house is set very far back,
Yeah.
it doesn't impact you as much from the street, because and also the land goes up and then it goes back down again. And so you do see it from the street. And I do think it's important to have something that refers stylistically to the house. But I think they do want to build a garage, because there is no garage on the property. And that building is going to impact the streetscape even more. And that hasn't been discussed yet.
That is the
exact-
other orange square.
Towards
Yep.
High Street, yes.
Okay, and then one more question from me before we go to other members. Well, kind of following up on that, I know you abut to the library.
Yes.
So is there, I don't know the view from the library property, amphitheater into the property, is it treed off? Can you see?
Yes, so I did take a photo of that's in your packet, and it says something like the gate at the library parking lot.
Mhm.
So essentially, if you walked to the end of the library parking lot, there is a very sad chain link fence with a little gate that belongs to the library, not the house. And then all around that fence, there's just volunteer Norway maples. So you really can't, unless you clean up all those just sort of scruffy Norway maples, see the carriage house. But because the owners are really not thrilled with staring at the kind of sad chain link fence, I think the idea as part of the landscape design is there's going to be something on their side so that they're not looking at the chain link fence. So probably people in the library parking lot won't really see anything at all.
Okay, great. And here's my last question, sorry. We have the king of deconstruction here, Danny Solomon. And this seems like a prime building, if you do move forward with this demolition, to be contributing to deconstruction and reuse. So is that something that can be part of your plan, that the material would be deconstructed rather than straight demo and maybe turned over to a program that Danny is instituting? Is that?
Well, Tailor Made is the builder on the project, and I think there would have to be a discussion with Tailor Made as to, the cost, and, depending on if it was not going to be interfering with the cost of removal, then it probably would be fine. I don't know quite how the two people would work together.
Well, that would be a hope for us. So
Yeah, I
so-
mean, basically, the only things that you're going to be salvaging from this building is their are timbers in the old part that are quite nice. Down, you can see the old timbers in the basement. And I'm sure that there's, a post and beam structure that's covered up by sheetrock that none of us can see. And there are two old door panels that were probably repurposed from the original barn door.
Okay.
But there's not much else. Like the inside, it looks like a motel on the inside, basically.
Okay.
There's
Other-
nothing cool and old, unfortunately,
It
inside.
was renovated by Maine Coast Construction way back when.
In the 80s,
In the
I think.
80s.
Yeah.
And so it is just a simple motel-y drywall sheetrock interior.
Beautiful.
Like Pella door type
You know,
of thing.
Pellador.
Great.
So-
Other member questions?
You mentioned it's in the setback for the creek there?
Yes, and you can see that line on the landscape plan. On the right-hand side of the drawing, there's sort of an arcing dashed line.
Right through the,
Goes right through the middle of the carriage house, yes.
and so, what are the implications of that? I didn't think you could rebuild within that setback.
So my understanding is if you have a building that is currently non-conforming, as this one is, you can renovate it or replace it as long as you do not make it more non-conforming and do not expand it more than 30% within the non-conforming area.
And this will have to go to the DEP. They're
Yeah.
going to have to apply for, it's not the shoreline zone, it's a DEP, Natural Resource Protection Act
Mhm.
application. So they're going to have to apply to DEP to do anything because it's within the 75 feet from that stream. So it's not actually the town shoreline zoning that's kicks in. They are in the shoreline zoning, but it's like the lower, very bottom part of the property. It has no impact on the structure there. But this is an existing non-conforming development, and then they will have to be, the state will require them to apply to them, to DEP, to,
I always thought that before building down, that you couldn't rebuild on the same footprint because it is now non-conforming.
you can, like in our shoreline, you can rebuild in the same, as long as you don't increase the nonconformity, like make it a bigger footprint or go in the direction towards the nonconformance. So they allow that because it's been there forever and, yeah.
And by
But-
rotating it, we make it slightly further from the stream, only slightly. but it
Slightly
does
less nonconforming.
tip it
yeah.
away a bit from the stream.
And so that all comes later when they come to apply for anything to be done. It's going to have to go through the review. There's a lot of review process things that we go through in the town, and then this will be as part of the state review of this whole project. So whatever they do.
Right.
So, yes.
Other question? Chris?
Well, a couple of questions. The existing carriage house, when was it built?
That's a very good question. So the house was clearly built in the late 1800s. And my belief is, from looking at the structure in the basement of the carriage house, there was an original barn at the Belfast end of things that was half the size of the current carriage house, because that half of the building has a post and beam frame. And then on the Camden end of the carriage house, you suddenly switch to Victorian balloon framing. And my belief is there was probably a house that predated that house that was torn down. And when they put in the new house, they were like, well, we don't really need to tear down this barn. We will just add to it and give it a new skin to make it all look of a piece. That's what I think.
Remember
They
when
can't see
the barn doors, they were, everybody leaves their garage.
Sure, yeah.
And everybody's garage is a mess. It doesn't look like the doors are always left open, but you can see in there, and there's always garage. Why does it have, I'm an artesianist, but why does it have to be turned and squared up?
It doesn't have to be. So for instance, if the DEP or the ZBA said, you can rebuild it, but you have to leave it where it is, oh, well. I just think that it would feel better for the landscape, and for right now, because of its angle, it starts to sort of encroach upon the view straight back from the house.
Looks
It would
nice.
be nicer to square it up, but it could be rebuilt.
Nicer,
Unfortunately,
Better,
yeah, nicer's always better.
not.
No. So,
I'm on-
so
I'm
what
on
happened was,
some.
what's interesting is I went back in the old town office records of building permits, and they don't go back forever. But back at some point, we know it was converted into apartments that were probably like apartments people would live in year round, because it was,
Wasn't it a bed and breakfast for?
but that came after. So I think first whoever lived in the house turned the carriage house into dwelling units. And then when it became a bed and breakfast, at some point in the 80s, it was renovated again. So there were no kitchens in there. It just became 4. So it was probably 2. It was registered as 2 living units, but then it became 4 guest rooms, each with their own bathroom. So that happened in the 80s. And then Main Coast Construction was doing it. And there was an engineering study. And the engineers at that time were like, you really need to redo this entire basement. It's failing, it's collapsing. And then they said, and if you aren't willing to do that, you at least need to do this remedial fix, was to plywood all the interior walls of the wood walls of the basement. And the bed and breakfast owners opted for that. So that sort of slowed down the slow collapse of the building. But if you were to go there now, it's hard to see in the photographs because everything's flattened, but you will see that the wall on the Belfast end, the base of the wall is probably a foot out from the eave. Like the whole wall is like this, and the rain is just running down the wall like it's a steeply pitched roof. And I'm sure if we opened it up, it would just not be a good thing inside. And yeah, it's pretty rough shape. Because it was, it was a business, and so they only did what they needed to do, really, to keep it seeming nice inside.
When was the tower put on?
That was probably done at the time that the house was built to sort of make it in the style of the house. And they probably stuck it on that side because the other side was the old post and beam barn, and it wouldn't have worked to attach it. You couldn't have created interior space because of the post of the old post and beam barn if you put it on the Belfast end. Though it probably would have been more attractive on the Belfast end if that's where they had chosen
So
to
it
put
kind of
it.
mimicked
More
the house
attractive.
too, because the house has it on the right-hand side.
Yeah. But it's a very different style of turret.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Other member questions? Do we have comments from the public or questions from the public?
You guys have something to say? Why not? After you.
Well, I think if we can get you on mic, that would be fantastic.
Turn it on.
This is a microphone.
You have to turn it on.
Hit the button so it turns green. There you go.
Okay, just,
First, can you identify yourself? Sorry.
yeah, Russ Williams, Camden. You said that the footprint of the carriage house is deemed unfit to build on.
Well, the foundation is collapsing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, but I did catch, you said you'd like a 30% increase on the carriage house if you was to rebuild.
No, we actually
don't
want
want
to
a foot.
slightly reduce it in size,
Mhm.
only by like a foot in length.
Okay,
But we're essentially building something that's the same size, the same height, similar shape. It just, we're suggesting if you have to rebuild it, just to rotate it square to the
with
house.
no increase on the footprint.
No
size.
increase.
No, it'd be smaller.
Slightly smaller.
That's it.
That's all.
Any other questions or comments? Michael?
We have another one.
Oh, sorry.
Meg, what's it going to be used for?
It actually will be used for the current use. They want to have 4 bedrooms in there as a guest house.
Okay, will that be a rental?
No, this family has more family members than will fit in the house. And they also have they'll want friends to visit and whatnot, so.
They're quite connected to this community. His mother has a house on Free Street, and they have another house down in Cushing. And both Mr. and Mrs. Wisdom are graduates of Bates College. They met at Bates College. They have a strong connection to the community and the state.
Their mailing address is New Orleans, though. Is that,
That's right.
so I assume they're not here year-round then? or-
No, that's
No,
where
no,
Mr.
no, that's-
Wisdom does
that-
his
that-
business.
I see, I
Yes.
see.
Yeah, that's where his business is.
I see. Question, can you identify yourself and?
Press push. Hi, I'm David Feldman. Sorry
Ah.
about that. I live at 7 C Street, so any work on that side of the building is quite impactful to my property and my view, et cetera. So this is the first opportunity I've had to see anything. I don't know if there was an earlier notice of construction, but we were not. Then that's fine. So I actually own the land in the ravine across the stream and to the other side. I am very concerned about anything that is done below the line of the elevation, let's call it grade, at the Wisdom's house. You show the red line, which I'm going to, for the moment, call property line. I see you have pins here. The dotted line is the setback. This large dotted line, is that the shoreland or EPA limits?
Yes.
Okay, so a few questions. One, you want to rebuild that in a good style, slightly smaller. I think that's wonderful what they're doing with the house. You also show here a brand new building. Is going to be some blocking of the view. Is this also going to be in the style of?
Yes, so
And-
that's like, we haven't even designed anything for that, but that's the conceptual location.
Now,
of
is
where
that an
you
as
might-
of right building?
A what?
As of right, are you allowed to build that as far as the property, the size of the land, the amount of coverage?
Yeah.
And I understand that goes to planning,
It does eventually. when it
but
comes
I don't
to-
know what my contribution can be at planning. So if this is my one and only contribution, I'm going to make it.
Yes, so
I
I would
am-
say if you want to have a concept, it would be one story on the uphill side. And on your side, of course, there's quite a drop off to the lower parking lot.
Mhm.
So the solid line you see down there is the line of that great big parking lot that's down below.
This solid line?
Yes, that's the line of the great big parking lot. So on the downhill side, there'll be a basement level. to
So
the
this is going to
garage.
be, I mean, you show the cars coming in here right now, that can't happen without major
Right.
reconstruction to the front. Okay. So now I understand what you're doing. I'm very much concerned if the long dotted line is the shoreland limit. Are there any plans for anything on my side of that limit?
Oh, no.
And the reason I ask that is previous owners of this building have done dumping of organic matter, and they've been asked by the town a long time ago to stop. And being that that affects the embankment, and as I'm the owner of 2/3 of that space, sorry about that, between where it drops off, my concerns are from the top of the embankment on my property to the top of the embankment or to the Wisdoms. And while I'm very much concerned that this stays in the style it is, and I'm very happy that they're spending money renovating a building, I want to put forward to here concerns that nothing is done within the embankment until it's been reviewed by the proper authorities. When I've had to do some things, I've had to go to DEP, to the town, some diseased trees, but there's a whole process. So I want to make sure that one, my view is still a nice view, because 6 months out of the year, I look everything there when it's not leafed out. And when it does leaf out, I want to make sure that unless there's diseased trees, that no trees come down, that there's not a reason for. We have an issue in this town about trees, and we all have reasons to cut trees, but trees within this embankment, the recent DOT project took out 3 or 4 and killed one on my property, which I'm now left with. But it's very important to me to make that statement here, that that perimeter is very important, not to be done anything to except improve. And that's all I have. And if I went beyond the historic districts
No,
committee, I just wanted to get that there.
No, I really appreciate that input, and I think Shanley can talk to process there a little
Well,
bit.
right, it depends. Yeah, go ahead.
Can you hold on for just one moment? Shanley, do you want to speak to the process
Oh,
there?
yeah, like I said, this is just right now, we're just looking at the historical and whether we want to waive the 120-day waiting period for the demolition permit, because we can't deny one at the way the code's written now. So you're right, it's just a historical review of, not just, but it's a review of what they're proposing to demolish. This put before you is basically a site plan. And it's a little premature, but it's good that this is what meetings are for, to get public input. But there will be a lot of things, like you mentioned before, that will need to be considered before anyone can build on the lot, like the impervious surface, the building coverage, setbacks. Those are things that are all going to be looked at. What they end up putting in this guest house, it may just be rooms, but if it ends up being additional dwelling units, different reviews will kick in with either the plan board, the zoning board of appeals, or somebody. But this is definitely a site plan that just will be addressed later on, but it's good to get comments. They're just, we appreciate that. So
Will there be other opportunities for public comment? Because I know sometimes building permits get done by the town, and it's not always a public forum.
right, depending on what they come forward with.
Okay.
But so we don't know, because we haven't really reviewed a site plan. This is just for the historic, but there could be.
Appreciate the time to speak today.
Absolutely, yes.
I'll just say one thing. So we've been working pretty closely with the landscape architects. And as far as I know, other than like leaving the edge of that asphalt parking lot where it is so that people can actually go around behind the corner so that they can service a generator or air conditioning units or get to the basement of the carriage house. They haven't mentioned about doing any even landscape design down below that edge of the driveway.
Another question?
Hi, I'm Bernice Simmons, and Russell and I own 5 High Street, which is the mansard next door, their only neighbor. And you said they wouldn't be encroaching property like at Dave's. Well, they already have ours. I am looking out the window, I am moving debris, boards, pipes, whatever, have already been over, and they did the line, and it's already on our property. And as you speak, if you go look right now, there's plywood sitting on my property. So when you say that they're not going to go over, I'm finding it hard to believe, okay? Because that's not been what's been happening.
Okay,
Because I have a close eye on everything.
may I respond to that?
Sure.
Okay, so we are the architects, okay? We are not in charge of the general contractor's behavior, okay? So those comments, while I agree with you, and I do go and look at the site, and I agree completely with what you're saying,
Yes.
that should be addressed to Clint at the code office.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
code
The,
enforcement.
Because-
the code officer is responsible, and if the code officer has not been doing his job to
Okay.
get out there and tell the general contractor to remove that stuff from your property,
Mhm.
or you have not filed a complaint to
Mhm.
let him know, because he's a busy guy.
Right.
So, maybe he overmissed it. He's a good guy and he knows his job.
Okay.
So that's the person you need to address.
Yeah, and the
It's-
only reason I said this is you brought up tailor-made being responsible. And
Right.
that's what made me think that, because
Right.
you're believing they're in charge of that. And I'm saying
No, but the
maybe they're not so much.
Right, but the
Just-
landscape architects and we as architects are only the design part of the project.
Yes.
And so Meg is correct when she says that the landscape architect has no plans to encroach on the bank or on your property for that matter.
Yeah, and,
It's-
and I want to see that is the
So-
thing.
So,
Because-
so
Yeah.
that's my suggestion.
Okay,
I'll
That's
pass
great.
that on to
Okay.
codes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for that comment.
Thank you.
So moving back to the committee, does the committee have any thoughts about how to address the application itself or any conditions of our?
I just have one more question.
Yeah, Danny.
And I might have missed this, you might have addressed.
Can we get you on a
it.
microphone? Sorry.
Can I borrow one of these?
There you go.
Thank you. I'm just curious if this does get approved, what is the timeline? Like when would when would be the earliest start date for demolition?
Okay. The Wisdoms, yeah, okay, all right. So right now, the project schedule date to complete the main building completely so they can use it is spring of 2025. By the start of June, let's say, end of May, somewhere in that time frame is the hoped for completion of the main building. So I'm not sure if it's determined that we have the demolition permit, that'll be discussion between Mr. and Mrs. Wisdom and Tailor Made Builders to decide whether they want to invest the money to go ahead with the demolition now or delay it until next fall. And then that's so that's a fuzzy answer to your question, but that's because we don't know what their plans are financially. He wanted to see whether he was going to get the permit first and then determine whether, when he wants to proceed with it. Because he doesn't want to have construction on that going on while he's enjoying the summer here next summer.
Understood.
Yes.
So
Thank you.
my suggestion to the committee, and please tell me if you'd like to make any additions to this, but since the work is so far outside the 120-day delay, my recommendation is to keep the delay in force and ask for consideration of deconstruction and reuse and have that conversation and document the historic aspects of the property and as you demo, and to keep in the spirit of, as you've said, maintaining the Queen Anne architectural style. So those are just recommendations from the committee, but that would be my position. What do people on the committee say?
What was your position again? I didn't.
Three things. One, to have that conversation about deconstruction and reuse and hopefully be able to use as many materials as possible. Two, to maintain the character of Queen Anne to what degree we can. And three, to, what was the third? Document the demolition and, historic elements of the property before it's gone. But to keep the 120-day delay in force because it's essentially irrelevant.
Are you saying to initiate a delay?
No. There is a delay in force, so rather than waive it, just keep it in force.
What does that mean, keep it in force? We have 120 days, but they're not gonna-
120 days from the application is automatic unless we waive it.
Well, right, that's why you're here, whether you want to waive it or not. But since it's irrelevant now because the timeline for them is so far into the future, there's no
Right,
sense
so-
in delaying, or no sense in interrupting that, waiving that 120, just let it run its course.
Okay. Well, I agree on your other point about the Queen Anne architecture because I feel like it's getting away from that. And we love our streetscapes and sort of the charm of all those little details that make Camden, what it is. And taking away the tower, since that was built in the 1880s, like the house, even though it doesn't match, but that's okay. Queen Anne's sort of a mishmash of everything. I just would like to see more of that charm in your reconstruction.
Unfortunately,
The tower was still there.
we can just make that wish, but that's about it.
Well, at least I said it.
Yes, thank you. Anything else?
Chris,
Brian,
you just
yes.
heard when you say have a discussion.
Mhm.
recommend- discussion between which parties?
Well, I would love it if there was discussion with planning and with the committee about, as you go back and look at the property, what elements could be deconstructed and reused, and maybe in consultation with Danny, because he's already done this with so many properties here within Camden. That would be, I think, a fantastic thing. Again, these are recommendations. So does that make sense, Brian?
Yeah.
Okay. Does that make sense to you?
It just, I mean, I'm interested to talk after the meeting about how that process would like logistically happen. Because that's the main issue, is the logistics of it.
Yeah.
And the finances of it.
Again, these are all wishes and recommendations, and they're effectively toothless, but it's, I think what the committee would like to see. So shall we move forward with a motion to keep the 120-day delay in force with the 3 recommendations? Do we have a first? Okay, and a second? Okay, all in favor? Say aye. Okay.
Aye.
And those opposed? Okay, all right, thank you.
So I just have one question.
Yes.
With the 120-day delay in force, which
Mhm.
like, it's not going to impact the building schedule at all.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Mhm.
I just want to know how that works procedurally for instance, applying for other things like making an application to the zoning board or whoever else might need to review this. Does it matter that that's enforced? Great, thank you.
Okay. All right.
I think you don't have to delay the demolition of the future garage. I think you should just tear it down right now.
And if you're curious about like the look of the garage, I'm imagining something similar to the garage we built at your old house on Union Street, except with Queen Anne detailing rather than Italianate detailing.
If you were going to demolish the carriage house, couldn't you nicely incorporate the garage in with the new carriage house?
No,
Unfortunately,
you can't.
because of the topography, we
You can't
can't.
do it.
And the size issue with their needs.
Access to it.
Turn the garage at the angle of the carriage house.
Okay. Are we good here?
No, I got one question.
Oh, okay.
On the Wisdom's was gonna be that summer house that you hope to have complete, but they'd be spending their summers in it. So when did you think that would be done?
The main house is expected to be done by the end of May. The end of this coming
6
May,
months from now?
2025, May 2025.
Okay.
And it looks to me they're working, the interior structural engineering work has all been put in place. The air conditioning, heating, ventilating system ductwork is going in right now. The rough and electrical is started, and the window replacements are on site. So look like they're pretty much on schedule.
Mhm.
The new chimney's going to be started very quickly here. So I think they're pretty much on schedule to complete that.
Are you looking to have the waiver so that this new building is going to be built by May of 2025?
No.
No, the carriage house is not, as I said before, the carriage house is not, most likely not going to start, if we're allowed to do it, is not going to start until the fall. And the Wisdoms are, because they don't want that to impact their use of the main house during the summer.
Well, thank you for coming in so early on this and all the information you provided. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to 42 High Street application. Do we have applicants here? Can you please introduce yourself and give us an overview?
Sure. My name's Cal Egan. I'm one of the partners of Tamarack Builders,
Shall we stay and listen?
representing the homeowners, Kate Murphy, who's attending via Zoom, and her husband, Tom Kerner. They recently purchased 42 High Street and hired us to do mainly interior renovations. We are doing an exterior paint job, as many of you have probably seen. You know, we noticed some small areas where there was some rot on siding and trim. We wanted to replace those areas to stay ahead of the painters. And what we discovered that, you know, the historic connector between the barn and the L off of the main house, which the L houses the kitchen, had some pretty significant rot and damage over the years. Sections of it had been rebuilt pretty poorly. And so there's also a small shed off the barn that's in a similar condition. These buildings are original, but they really don't have foundations like the main house does. The main house is on a big, wide buttress stone foundation with a granite top. These are essentially, the connector and the shed are essentially sitting on a rubble foundation above grade. And so our request is to waive the 120-day waiting period so that we can tear down the connector and the shed, with plans to rebuild it in the future once designs are approved and finances are in order. But that's likely not for a few years. And we're, you know, the need for the waiver on the 120-day delay is just more acute because, you know, we've got winter coming up. Tearing these structures down is going to have, you know, it's going to result in a big open wall on the main house that we need to get filled in and weatherproof before the worst of winter weather comes. So that's my real concern with the delay. Our intent, you know, is to salvage the wood paneling in the connector, as well as some elements of the pantry, which are pretty interesting. There's, you know, an ice box, and there's some interesting glass cupboards and stuff like that, some of which have already been removed carefully, as well as like a number of other things inside the house itself. You know, we've been careful to salvage flooring and wainscoting and trim everywhere we can. It's a pretty special property. It's only ever had, you know, Kate and Tom are the third owners, so it's been relatively untouched for a long time. And the main house has some pretty amazing bones. I've never seen a property this age with a nice looking roof and basement as this property has. So it's an exciting opportunity for us, but unfortunately the connector and the shed are in really rough shape.
Okay, I have a couple quick questions. So I'm just curious about the timing, why you want to demo now, but then the plan for the construction, all that is farther in the future. Why not do those things at the same time or closer together?
Good question. I mean, I think the plan to rebuild would be, you know, several years in the future. The homeowners could maybe speak to this more, but they have daughters in university. They're living in the Boston area right now, and their plan is to, you know, sell their Boston home and move here permanently. So I think those are the big pieces of the puzzle for them in terms of the financing to be able to do those phases of the project. And so we thought in the meantime, the best compromise for the budget is really to just eliminate these structures, you know, put down some topsoil and some grass in this area. You know, the cost comparison between tearing this down and building a new structure is, you know, tens of thousands of dollars versus hundreds of thousands of dollars. So it's a big difference in cost.
So you've been pretty clear, there's no new construction. It's just the landscaping that will go in place of what would be removed in the connection.
That's correct.
Yeah, and is the siding that will be replaced, is there enough siding on the connection itself that can be used? So there's original woodwork on the, you know, the gaps that are created, or how would that be dealt with?
It's possible. The south side of the connector seems like it's all original or at least very old. The north side wall has definitely been rebuilt, I would say probably within the last 20 years. So that's not really original material. And yeah, happy to use what we can salvage for sure.
And then similar to what I said with the 9th Street application, our main thrust of our interest is, maintaining streetscape and character of a neighborhood. And so with the connector, I assume that it doesn't really have much impact on terms of streetscape since it is tucked between the house and the barn. But I'm just
we
curious
disagree.
about that assessment. But we'll get to that.
Sure. From High Street, it's difficult to see the connector. From Mountain Arrow, it might be a little easier to see it.
Got it. Okay.
But it is set back from both roads quite a ways. And there's some very mature trees along the borders of both of those roads.
Okay, great. Other member comments, questions?
I'd like to know what building is, like, what is the configuration of the connector? Like, there's the kitchen, and then what is now in between the kitchen and the barn?
So this is a rendering. So
Right.
this is the kitchen building here, what I would refer to as the L. And then there's a connector that connects those two, and as well as a shed here, which
Okay. Okay. So in my,
Back house, no house, barn.
exactly.
What's
It's
that?
it's a whole lot of house, that's for sure.
so in my research, looking at the website for the Camden Rockport Historical Society, I found a painting of that house. Have you seen this painting?
No, I haven't.
And it's, I don't know what just happened, but so you can see the house is actually so much the same. It has hardly changed at all. It's a federal style and, well, sort of, it's a transitional style. And then you see the barn, which is exactly the way it is now. And I think I'm guessing this was painted around 1850. So the house was built in 1830.
Correct.
And the family who built it and lived there had 10 kids. So I think they were there for quite a while. Probably why not much has changed too.
Yeah, I mean, until Kate and Tom bought this last year, it had only ever had 2 owners.
Yeah.
And there's been very few
That's amazing.
projects done. So it has some very interesting original stuff in there. Floors, windows, original plaster on the walls. There's still a 6-seater in this connector. So
As in an outhouse?
exactly.
How long will the demolition take and what will it look like in the in-between stages until you move to, new construction or finalizing?
So there has been some partial work done already, like as we tried to repair siding and some trim, we just start peeling back the layers of the onion, and all of a sudden you've got a whole wall of framing exposed to sort of see what's going on and say, okay, can we fix this or not? So that would be the north side wall. Essentially has no siding on it right now. It's got a tarp covering the wall up. I think we could pretty quickly move to have the rest of the building taken away. And our goal would be to clean up the barn and the kitchen walls as quickly as possible, get those weather tight so that we can, again, focus on our interior renovations.
Chris?
So the work is going to the rebuilding and all that. So that's going to be years out. So what's going to happen to the 2 blank sides of the barn and
I think
the
that's the
house?
kitchen.
They'll get sided with clapboards and be painted to match the house. And then the space in between will essentially become part of the lawn for the time being.
Pat, you had a question?
Well, I wondered, Pat Scaling, I'm in a butter on Mountain Arrow. And, you said that the the damage was extensive and cannot be repaired without replacing the structure. Can you explain to me how an animal could do damage enough so that you can't repair it?
Sure, it's not just the animal, but yeah, so as we did this discovery work, we were able to get into the attic of this part of the building, which there wasn't any access to before. And there's, a large animal was living there for a long time. I don't know if it was a, barn tomcat or a raccoon or what, but there's tons of feces up there. I think the roof was getting wet for a while. So this animal had been chewing on the roof purlins and rafters, the principal rafters of the timber frame structure. Almost looks like a beaver was living up there. And then, there's a beam. So there's a beam that carries the rafters that appeared to be in good shape. There's a beam below that carries the ceiling framing that is totally rotten and essentially turning into dust that, somebody had seen this not so long ago and decided to just cover it back up. It's not really the way we like to do things. And just talking through it with my clients and, my partners and thinking about, can we even reconstruct this if we wanted to as is? And I think the answer is no. I mean, it's got a bad roof. It's got a bad ceiling. It's got bad walls. It's got a bad floor. It's not on a foundation. Like, we would need to start at the bottom, even if we wanted to build it exactly the same as it is. And that's a very expensive project. And I think the homeowners, in addition to the expense, it's like they want to live in the house for a little while and really decide what they want that space to be, if they ever do make the investment to rebuild that. The barn also is on essentially a boulder foundation. So there's big sections of the barn that are just sitting on rubble or floating. And while it is in good shape, it's not something you could use to, say, drive a vehicle into. And it eventually needs to be, essentially cribbed, moved back into the field. You need to dig a proper foundation so that you could salvage it for the long term and have it be something that was sort of up to a modern standard. So it really does make sense to do both that project and the rebuilding of the connector in conjunction. And so that adds to the expense as well.
Well, I mean, all of these, both, the foundation of the barn and the connector both need a lot of work. And to me, it seems like these things are repairable rather than removing them. I'm just wondering, the cost of demolition is expensive. The cost of replacing is expensive. Has anybody ever done a cost estimate, how much it costs to demolish and rebuild as opposed to repairing what is there?
We have looked at what it would cost to rebuild it as new. We started to think about repairing it, and again, it's just something that, it needs too much. It needs too much, and we have codes nowadays where our energy efficiency and our thermal envelope and our air tightness of our house really has to be considered when we're rebuilding something. It gets really tricky because there's a pantry, the kitchen pantry is in this connector. So if you rebuilt or repaired the connector as unconditioned space, you're putting all this time and effort into it, and your pantry's in unconditioned space outside the thermal envelope of the house. But it gets really muddled and really difficult to figure out how to properly detail that so that we're meeting the code, and it's really tricky.
So in the long range, what will eventually be there?
I think that's a little bit unclear. I think something very similar to what's there now is the idea, to keep the connection between the house and the barn, whether that's conditioned space like, an entry mudroom area, or whether that's unconditioned space like potentially a screened porch or something like that. I think that's
Could it be
not yet known.
two-story connector?
I'm not sure about that. Right now, it's a one-story building, but there's not
Why
even
can't
a,
that stuff be done in what's there now?
why can't
I mean,
you
it's a remodeling project. You have to go in there and fix the,
cost?
all the,
I think that it really comes down to cost. I mean, the cost to rebuild that structure is very expensive. I mean, building costs right now are exorbitant. $500 to $1,000 a square foot. Most people in town who do make a good living and have nice property can't do projects on their house right now. It's so expensive. And right now, our clients are putting in a massive investment into this property, a bigger investment than I think has happened in decades, if not centuries, to this property. And it's just, there's no way for them to take this additional cost on. And there is no real schematic design of what would go in there to replace it right now.
I understand if you do a complete rebuild, you've got to install foundation. But in a remodel or a renovation, is the situation such that it cannot be restored without redoing foundation work and to that level of construction? Or
It wouldn't be rebuilt to our standard if we didn't start from the ground up. Somebody did repair this not so long ago, and I don't know who did that, but they didn't do a very good job. I don't want somebody to go into a building that we put our name on and we've worked on and open it up and say, I thought these guys were good. Why'd they do this?
Was it part of the original?
I believe so, yeah. The barn and the house both have dates, 1831. I think it was all built at once, which is pretty impressive.
I don't think you need to answer.
But that connector also is not built to the standard of the house or the barn.
The barn and the connector are both on a much more rudimentary foundation than the house itself. Yep.
You mentioned that you plan to be careful about salvaging the wainscoting and trim and that kind of material.
Mhm.
Do the homeowners plan to hold on to that since they're not rebuilding right now? Or are you going to hold on to that material and reuse it?
Some things we will be able to reuse immediately in the house. There's a large barn, luckily, so there's a lot of space to store stuff. That's where we've been storing things now. And yeah, that's where we'll store anything we salvage out of this.
do aesthetics have anything to do with this?
I think,
Do they not like the connector structure?
no, I think everybody would have rather kept the connector. I mean, the small shed that's off the barn has a very sunken in eave line, roof line. So it's a bit of an eyesore for sure. The connector, has some character. It's got a lot of wave in the ridge. And it's, you can see it's got some deficiencies, but otherwise I think it's kind of charming. Yeah, I think they wish they could keep it.
Other questions or comments?
It's such an iconic expression of early New England components that were connected to get to the barn. And I just hate to see something removed if it can be repaired. And it doesn't sound like, you've actually costed out the repair as opposed to the new construction. That's my only comment. And I'm not a builder, so I don't know, but I would like to just interject that sometimes it's just very costly to demolish and rebuild. And you have something to work with. It's not like you have to replace all of the material. Maybe, I haven't seen it, so I don't know. But if you could repair the roof and the rafters and shore up the foundation, I just wonder, has that really been explored?
Yeah, we spent a lot of time thinking about how we would rebuild this and if we could rebuild it. And you just, you end up going into a scenario where, okay, you've taken the whole building apart except for the floor. And then you look at the floor and the sills are rotten in the floor and the floor is completely uneven. And then you look at what's below the floor and it's not really on a foundation. And so it's just, it wouldn't be up to any of our typical standards that we build to if we were to put it back together. And I also it would be at least as much money to repair it as it would be to build something completely new. And it would be a lot less money to just remove the structure and patch in the walls and patch in the siding and wait for some better days ahead. So
Yeah, I just feel like once it's gone, it's gone. It's kind of iffy if down the road, someone will reproduce it. Maybe a new owner, you just never know. And once it's gone. And it's just the most beautiful example, I think, in town of the connecting buildings that were connected for a purpose back historically.
So I'm going to look for another committee member to make a formal recommendation, but I will say this. It pains me to say this, but I think it is stunning, beautiful. I wish it could be preserved. I wish it could be restored. But my recommendation be, I don't see why we wouldn't lift the 120-day delay, as much as I hate to see that demolished. But I really would rather see another committee member make a recommendation on this, and maybe perhaps a contrary one.
Excuse me. May I make a comment? This is Kate. I'm the homeowner, and thank you all
absolutely.
for being here. I just wanted to speak a little bit about the history of the home and the current state of it. Cal and his team have done a phenomenal job of going through the property with a fine-tooth comb. Even from the very beginning, before we bought the property, we brought Cal on board to do an inspection. And this was a very unpleasant discovery to find this animal or the belongings or the remnants of an animal and what had been done. And we're happy to share images and video of that space. But to his point, we hired Cal because of the integrity of the work that they do at Tamarack. And he's not kidding when he says that we're up at $500 to $1,000 a square foot. Tom and I currently live in an antique carriage house in Brookline, Massachusetts. And this will be the third home renovation that we've undertaken. And so we're very familiar with antique buildings and love them. And we brought Cal and his team on because, as I've said, we know that he knows what he's doing and he's been phenomenal. And so we would love to keep the connector. It was very disappointing to us to look at this as a demolition. But we did go back and forth on numbers up and down and sideways. And we decided in the end to retain the integrity of the main building, which is in excellent condition given its age, because it was built very differently. We wanted to make sure that this property lived on for another several hundred years. And unfortunately, in the past, it has been not maintained the way that we had hoped and the way that we will continue to maintain it ourselves. And so therefore, to take it down, to take the connector down to the foundation and rebuild it, and which we will. We have full intentions on doing that. But as Cal mentioned, this has come as a surprise. So we're not prepared to do that given our family's university situation, et cetera. But to take it down to its original ground level and build a proper foundation, proper framing, proper roof and structure, and proceed that way, along with replacing the barn floor, which we absolutely plan to do. In fact, we've already quoted the cribbing on that. It's exorbitant. The timing of that is very difficult. We wouldn't even begin to do that. We couldn't even begin to do that for another 9 months out at least because of the delay in construction. So at this juncture, we've decided to really make an effort to bring back the main building in its, its original form, with of course new bathrooms, new kitchen. We've redone. We are in the process of redoing all the plumbing, all the electrical, which is still mostly knob and tube. We were retaining as much of that as possible. That's in good shape. We're going to be doing an efficient heating system, adding air conditioning and an air circulation system, so that again, the health of the building is integrity is there. And so it's quite a project. It's a very, very lengthy and costly project. And to focus on the main building, which is in, as I said, in phenomenal shape, that's where we plan to spend our time at this moment. And then we will address the rebuild of the connector and the foundation of the barn at a future date. But Cal has gone upwards and backwards on trying to figure out this situation. His quality control and the integrity of his building techniques is phenomenal. And we are working with an architect from day one. They're located in Rockport. It's a team of people there that have been consulting with us every step of the way. So the renderings and other floor plans and drawings have been done by them. So I hope that everything, I appreciate the fact that everybody is so respectful of this building. So it's great to hear your feedback and we appreciate it. Thank you.
No, thank you. That context is fantastic. Yes,
Is there any time for just a citizen comment on this?
absolutely.
Okay, so I'm speaking now as a citizen and former chair of the Historic Resources Committee. So my thoughts on this are that a demolition delay is simply a delay to the inevitable if in fact the homeowner wishes to demolish it. And winter is coming. And what these people are asking for is the ability to button up the main house before winter. That's how I see it. And I think it would just be a shame if they were denied that opportunity simply to make a point that you would rather save a link that really was built as a utility structure, not as a important piece of architecture at the time when people were thinking about its construction, as is clear from the quality of its construction compared to the main house.
I'm in complete concurrence with that. Yes, Michael.
Michael Scaling, and we're in a butter on Mountain Arrow. The view is incredible. I have pictures before there were many trees there 15 years ago. It's incredible. So I would have a couple of comments. One is I respect what you're trying to do and probably need to do. In this demolition delay, I believe there's some words to take pictures of it, and I don't think you find a sweeter side view of that building than what's there today, when you step back from the problems it has. And I would love for you to photograph the heck out of it, measure it, make sure you know what's there, and then Kate, when you're ready to rebuild, that you've got kind of a good image and even a plan to move forward on. But it's such a beautiful building. We were so pleased that someone with interest in historic preservation purchased the building and cares for it so much that I agree. What you're doing is terrific. It couldn't be better. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael. You both have taken the words out of my mouth. That was going to be my recommendation, that we lift the 120-day delay with the desire that the current property is very well documented, and with the hopes that it may and someday be recreated or approximated, and so that whatever steps need to be taken to document it to that level that would be our desire. That's my recommendation. Any other members like to amend that recommendation or make it a formal motion?
I move to the recommendation.
Okay, all right, so we have a motion on the floor. Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and opposed? Okay, great, so that's our recommendation. We're approving the lifting of the 120-day delay with the hope that there's ample documentation of the building as it stands now.
One thing is, all we deal with is demolition. And we have no control over what's going to happen after something's demolished. This is wonderful because we never have gotten this much information of what the future is going to look like. And so this wonderful little L, which is very simple, utilitarian structure, it could be a two-story, multi-lighted structure, and that would just completely demolish the integrity of the current structures and all that. So that's my complaint about the demolition delays.
And I'll piggyback that to make a little comment for anyone who's listening that on November 5th, we have the opportunity to endorse the drafting of a historic preservation ordinance. And I hope we get the support of the town so we can move forward with that and address things like that.
And
So-
it's my understanding if we were ever applying for a building permit, because we're in the historic district, we would be going through this process again and you would be given that information. No?
Only for demolition.
Only for demolition. Okay. All right.
So thank you very much. And especially your context there,
Are you
Kate.
still
That was
in the
wonderful. Thank
design
you.
review
Well,
committee?
hey, I wanted to thank you all. I mean, we have wonderful neighbors and we really appreciate the time that you're spending now and in the past and in the future on the love of this building. It is phenomenal. And I completely agree with Pat and Michael. The view driving up High Street and seeing, or down Mount Narrow and seeing this building and its historic setting with the gorgeous lot and, the structure of the building, I think is, and with Cal on board and with Helen and Jeff Leclerc from Unison Architects, I mean, we'll do whatever we can. And I fully appreciate your request to document this current state, and we will absolutely keep it in mind and proceed to rebuild as soon as possible, really. Because we don't want this to go on forever either. But in the meantime, in the interim, we will have the house looking great for the spring, we hope. And now with this move up is fabulous news. And Cal can continue to work on the building and we can get it in great shape before the winter. But it's a gem of a property, and we're hoping that, it'll remain that way for many, many years or decades and centuries to come. So thank you for your time and invaluable input. It was great.
You too. Thank you. So thank you for both our applicants. And we will move on with the rest of our agenda. And anyone who wants to go, please feel welcome to stay or go.
Good to see you, John. Good to see you.
No, we're just getting started. Thank you.
Thank you again. I'm going to hop off.
All right, thank you.
Have a good day.
You
Bye-bye.
too. Okay. Are we ready to move on? Did I hear a cheer? Okay. Or a sigh? Okay. All right. I'm going to return to the chair's report. And we left off at the election, and we'll try and keep things moving. I know this is a long one, so. Quick update. We do have a table at the election, which is fantastic, with the condition that we are not allowed to provide any advocacy before somebody votes. So after somebody's votes and they are making their way past our table, we are allowed to then explain for forthcoming election, if assuming we've drafted our preservation ordinance or code as it's being called, hopefully for next November, that we can explain what the contents of that might be, and we can take input from people so we can staff that table. So first thing I'd like to do is see how we can staff the table and then get into what we might want to do at the table. So my wife and I are willing to take one shift, and I've kind of divided the day into 4 little blocks, morning, lunch, afternoon, and evening. So I'm hoping we might get 1 or 2 volunteers for each of those blocks. I'd love to take the lunch block, but I'll take whatever's left over. Does anybody willing to take a 3-hour block, either morning, afternoon, or evening? Evening, all right, Danny.
I'll do afternoon.
You'll do afternoon? Nice, thank you, Rhonda. And I'm sure Pat and Michael are happy to do morning.
So what, is there morning time?
Oh, yeah, Brian, you up for?
But I'd be happy to do it.
You do morning?
Yeah, when would that begin?
8 to 11 is my understanding. The election begins at 8 in the morning.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right.
What would the evening shift be?
It's from 5 to close, which I believe is 8 as well.
Do you need one person, 2 people?
Well, we've got a person in each block, and if we take more, that'd be great.
Because I could do the 9 o'clock.
9 o'clock? Oh, after, no, it's closed after. Oh,
No,
9
I
in the
mean
morning.
morning. And
Oh, great. Why don't you join Brian then?
I can do anything. I'm 3
Okay.
minutes away from.
Okay.
So afternoons 2 to 5.
Afternoon is 2 to 5, yeah. Okay, great. Thank you all. That was painless. In terms of materials, I circulated last week a draft handout, which I've gotten comments from everyone. I'm going to include feedback that Danny gave. I have not incorporated that yet, but I plan to do that today so I can get the press releases out. I thought what you suggested was fantastic. But overall, it looked like everybody kind of gave me the thumbs up on the drafts where they are now. So I'm going to take that as I have your approval to include your name on the signature line. And I might have Tracy do a little bit of art direction on our handout so it looks pretty. But I plan to have that handout. And I was going to also print out some examples of historic preservation ordinances so people can see those. And kind of the recommendations of the Maine Historic Resources Commission. But I wondered if there's also an opportunity to do some kind of surveying. I started to put together a survey, and as I did it, I kind of thought this is weird, but I wondered what you thought. I started putting questions like, what would you like to see in the preservation code? What would you not like to see in the code? Are you generally for or against the town moving forward with this? Would you like to advise in the process and then alert them to the fact that when we have our meetings so that they can attend and have input? Those all seem like things we can just informally talk to about people who stop by, or do you think it should be more formal and actually take a kind of a survey and
Exit
document?
poll?
Yeah, I don't know if there's a purpose to that or not, but I just kind of want to get a temperature check on that. What do people think?
I mean, that could be one of the questions. Were they for it, against it? That'd be the last question.
Yeah. Do we want to have like a 5-question survey exit poll of people as they're going out, or just kind of informally talk to people?
We could have it and just ask people if they'd like to participate in the exit poll and give them the 5 questions to answer, or ask them the 5 questions.
Okay.
Were you thinking of a written one, or it would be?
I don't really know.
We'd take notes.
I don't know. I was hoping you guys
Yeah.
would figure it out.
We
Has anyone
did,
done something like this before?
I've
'Cause
never
usually
seen
when I
it.
go to vote, I just kind of go through
It's
it,
for
get it done.
information. Yeah.
I'm just not sure if folks would be willing to spend that time. So
That was
we
kinda
might
my-
want to just kind of be smart about how
Was-
we use their time if they're willing to.
That's
In-
why the exit polls are biased.
yeah,
Yeah.
in June, we held we had a booth, a table for the Curtis Island. And what I found is some people were like you, like just don't even want to make eye contact. I want to get out of here. And others would stop and talk. And so if there were a conversation and we knew there was a lot of interest, then, hey, if you're interested, fill this out, or can we contact you? So the best thing that we did there was get some people's names and numbers who wanted to become volunteers for Curtis Island.
Why don't we do this? Just picking up on what you said. Why don't we have a contact sheet that anybody's interested in more information can give their email address, and then why don't we have like our own little journal or diary? So as we have conversations with people, if somebody says something that's really interesting, we'll just document that ourselves for our internal discussions.
And I think that's good because people are moving, and then you've got the table next to you and whatever is going on there, and the one beside you. So try to get the first table by the door.
Okay.
But if they're interested when we're having meetings, then
Yeah.
we could send them an email and say we're having citizen meetings or whatever.
Well, can we have a handout that has our social media addresses on it?
Yeah, on the handout that I wrote, I was going to add our social media contacts and our meeting
Up to.
times. Okay. Okay.
And the town website.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Could you have a printed chart of the things that you were saying, what would you like to see in the ordinance, like paint, windows, whatever, and then just have people check off and kind of see.
That's an interesting idea.
They may not, but I
Right.
may not really know what's involved in that, but
That's true.
that would give them some.
It's a great idea, but I think what Pat's saying is true, that maybe people don't already have preconceived ideas. And one thing I'm worried about, and as I was thinking about this, is we don't want to start triggering negative responses to it.
Yeah,
Like,
I was gonna say, yeah.
like, oh, here's something to be worried about.
Right.
It's a good idea. Yeah, yeah.
And also, I think the point of this vote is to, say we're not moving forward with it yet. We just want approval that we
Yeah.
can start to think about it. So it might be premature to
I'd like
get
to
into
know
that
if they
kind of
live-
detail.
If they live in an antique house.
Hmm. Okay. All right. So I'll make this handout. I'll send it to everyone, and everyone can give me feedback. Great. So that's the election. Really happy to have everyone there and kind of have a plan.
Anything built before 1940.
So next item is the historic New England Summit. We still don't have approval for dollars for that. That discussion has really effectively been tabled. I hope when we get to Ken that I might be able to reintroduce that for the next meeting in time to be able to attend that summit. Assuming that the town will subsidize us going, are there still members interested in attending that for either 1 or 2 days? It's November 14th and 15th. It's in Portland.
Yeah.
I know you had expressed interest. I know Rhonda had expressed interest, and I think, Pat, you may have expressed interest.
I had, but I think I would pass.
Okay. Okay. All right. So I'll again, go to the select board now that, and see if they'll approve those dollars. Does anybody have any updates on, I'm assuming Ken might, but on the bridge discussion that came up in our last meeting? That's where I was really dropping in and
Got
out
a
of
little
that.
upset about that.
In our meeting or in?
Well, no,
At the-
right after that meeting, I hit up Jeremy for,
Okay. Do you have anything to report to us about
but
that?
I went over and looked at it and it was even worse than, but I haven't seen any drawings of what that's supposed to be like in the future. And also, my one thing is I hope they paint the bridge itself. And because raw aluminum is just not going to look very nice over there if they could paint it black. But the bell has been neglected. And it's now they've put this concrete thing up. I haven't been there for weeks or so. But the bell has just sort of gotten stuck out underneath the thing, and it could have been incorporated into a nice.
Do we think there's any steps
But,
that we can take as a committee on this?
But I got angry at Jeremy because we were not brought into it at anything, and it's a town.
None of us
town
were aware of it at
property
all.
and-
It's my, yeah, it just
We
kind of happened.
discovered it while walking.
Yeah.
But
What was his response?
he said that, the
Jen, you want to come?
the actual work on the island is, and it's not under purview. But the work on there, he did grant a building permit for the harbors, the concrete and all that. But he didn't have to approve for the bridge itself because of something or other. But anyway,
That doesn't make any sense.
it just.
Yeah, I talked to Jeremy about it and he said because it was temporary, then.
Yeah, that's right. It's a temporary
Then
structure.
he did not need to get shoreland zoning or DEP. It was a simple in-house application and procedure.
Has anybody been by there recently?
But all that concrete is temporary?
No, just the bridge itself, because it's supposed to be removed after use.
Okay, so I guess I just don't understand the project.
I can't justify it. I'm sorry.
How long is it? Do we know how long it's going to be up?
Well, it's going to be brought in and taken away, and it's not supposedly what
I'm hoping it
Jeremy
gets.
said is it's only it won't stay on the property. It'll be stored somewhere else, and every time they use it, but it's going to be sitting there for months.
So I'm hoping this will be on the select board agenda. I can't automatically say I would like it on the agenda and it will appear there, but I think there will be a discussion at the next select board meeting. The current plans of the town is they will call it temporary, but if it's just 6 months or less, then that's temporary. And their current plans are to put it in place when they put the gangways and the floats in place and then remove it at the same time, which means it would be there from April, May, or June, whenever they put them in, until November. So the question is that what is intended by temporary? It's a contentious point right now.
When is the next select board meeting? I'm sorry.
A week from tonight.
A week from tonight. So,
I'm really mad at myself because I saw it in the paper. I didn't go to the meeting, but way back when it was proposed. And I can kick myself for not spending some time on the issue.
When will you know if it is on the agenda or not? Will you know it by Thursday or something like that?
They're working on the draft agenda, but they don't share it until it's.
Chris, are you willing to attend? I'll go next Tuesday for the public comment and maybe introduce it that way if it's not on the agenda. Or
The next select board meeting?
Mm-hmm.
I can.
Okay.
Certainly.
So just for my information, was that built to clean up the trees and the debris on the rock? Is that what the purpose of?
Basically, yes. It's becoming a longer and longer story. The Montgomery family donated $157,000, whatever, to work on the dam and to do the landscaping. I'm trimming those bushes that are growing on the ledges there.
Mhm.
And in order to get there, they would need a gangway. The town designed and built what is there now. It was just put in place within the last week, this aluminum structure. I'm trying to make a short story out of this, but it's not particularly a short story. So because of the timing and because of the nature of the bridge, the Montgomerys have withdrawn their donation. And so the town is going to have to pay for that bridge.
Oh, jeez.
And the town select board, to my knowledge, never saw the design and approved the design. The concept was approved when the gift was accepted, but the particular engineering sketches were not reviewed and approved.
Wow.
So it's complicated.
It's complicated, yes.
A little screwy. Okay. Well, this segues to the liaison report. Do you have anything else to apprise us of?
I do. The MRCAC, the McGonagall River Citizens Advisory Committee, has planned their 2 public sessions, and this is the first time the MRCAC has done public sessions where they're inviting public input, and their invitation is couldn't be better. They really are looking for public input, and they will use that input to adjust their plans and to come to their conclusions. So they're planning 2 evening sessions on October 22nd and October 30th. So that's a Tuesday, and then the following, a week later on a Wednesday, 6 to 7:30 at the Sierra Middle School. And because they are seeking public input, I recommend and encourage that as many as you and as many as the public can be there and speak up about what you think of the whole river project, and there will be focus on the Montgomery Dam as well.
Is there, do you know, are they, I didn't go to the most recent meeting, but the previous meetings when they've discussed this evening, it has been ostensibly a 2-way communication. Is that still the plan, or is it just a presentation to the public? Are they taking any input?
They have a meeting tomorrow, and they will finalize the sequence of how they're presenting it. But my understanding is that it'll start with, say, a half hour's worth of presentation about they will have specific options, perhaps 3, maybe 4, but 3 options is what they're considering presenting drawings of, and then have people respond to those options. And then it remains to be seen, but I don't know how much public time that they are scheduling for the public response. The original was 15 minutes, which is totally inadequate, so maybe a half hour. I'm not sure. They will be inviting written responses at that session as well.
So when is that planning meeting tomorrow night?
4 o'clock.
Here in the Opera House?
I think it's right here.
Oh, here, okay.
Yeah.
Great.
That's
I will
the
plan to attend that.
It is on the calendar, on the town calendar. That is the MRCAC monthly meeting is tomorrow. That's what Chris was asking about.
Yeah.
Could you repeat the second date of the?
Yeah,
two
the
sessions?
30th of October.
30th, thanks.
Great. Anything else? Is that good?
Nope, the next select board meeting is a week from tonight, and the two MRCAC open sessions. That's it. Great, thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Moving to ongoing business, we've already addressed the 2 demolition applications. Danny, did you have anything to talk about in terms of the deconstruction reuse? I really appreciated your input on the letters to the editor, and I'm hoping that you can play some role in these demolition applications.
Exchange numbers with Meg, so I'll definitely look into that. And yeah, I'm still looking to do at least one deconstruction project as like a demonstration project in the spring. So I'm trying to get everything in place in order to do that properly. I also, you mentioned wanting to like document these properties, and I've also talked a little bit about maybe building that into this business. And I recently got film negatives that we had found in the deconstruction project we did at the Camden property. digitally scanned.
Uh-huh.
I had no idea what the quality would be because they were
Yeah.
really dirty and pretty damaged, but they're phenomenal. So I just kind of wanted to share that
Yeah.
with everyone to see. There's 4 negatives that are still being scanned, but it's wartime imagery. So
Wow.
if there's anyone who could maybe help identify,
Where did these come from?
so the property that I presented on that we took down last winter in Camden, it was a house from 1890.
Is that the one off Belmont Street?
Yes, yeah, on Brookside. Yep.
Okay.
So Ken, I'll pass these to you first.
Wow, that's so cool you did
Yeah.
that.
So I'd like to maybe, at some point, I also have a lot of objects from that project, and the materials from that project are some of which are going to be used for the Villager Cafe that I'm working on. So I'd love to do a story, maybe using this as the first example to kind of think about how we want to narrate that. That
Is there any update on either Chestnut Street or the cafe?
The Chestnut Street project, what is the street address for that again? What is the number?
Is it 16?
Can't remember.
Is there another project happening on Chestnut that's a historic project?
There's just that one
The one.
demo
Okay.
that I'm aware of.
Okay. Because only like less than a week ago, Nick Bauer from Harbor Builders, who's a friend of mine, he's working on a Chestnut property, and he reached out asking about deconstruction of that, which would be great to work with him because we have, a relationship. And
You know what number that was?
I was intending to find out what it was before this meeting, but I can reach out to him.
I know the
confirm that.
Glasses house is not 38. They're on the other side of the street, but it must be like 41 or 40.
The Barrett House?
Yeah.
I'll just
Because
text him right
it's
now,
just
maybe he'll
kind
figure it
of amazing that the number is that high because they're not that far past the post office, but it's a high number, higher number than you'd think for that little cape.
I think I have it here.
Number.
Danny, the negatives are found in the floorboards or?
in the walls. But it doesn't make sense that they were placed there when the house was built, obviously, because it was built in 1890. So it's possible that they were like thrown into the walls from the attic or something like that. I have the original negatives here still, so I'm gonna, maybe have that be part of the exhibition eventually.
59.
59.
But yeah, there's 4 more, so we'll see what those reveal as well. But yeah, I would love to start really digging into the story of the previous owners. I know, I was like so blown away by the quality of them.
Oh my God.
Well, during the wartime effort, Ken has always told me that there were a lot of men who came and lived and boarded in Camden to work on different things that were going on toward the war effort. And maybe these had something to do with.
I'm assuming
The
these.
shipyard, where they were running 3 ships a day, building the ships for the Navy. These look unrelated to the shipyard.
Yeah, I just brought in the war element.
When you
It's
say
like
the war, I can't tell what.
World War II.
Were they patrol boats or what kind of ships?
ATRs and barges. ATRs are tug rescue boats.
I'm assuming these are training exercises. They're not actual wartime images.
Not sure.
Wow, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, and I looked at the digital versions, and the quality is so good that you can zoom in and make out the names on their
Wow.
on their uniforms. So yeah,
That's great. And anything on the cafe?
yeah. So the design has gone through a lot of different ideas, sort of ambitious ideas for what we could do, and we're starting to reel it back into reality. But I think we're moving into the phase where we can look at the design and build of the elements that I'll be kind of in charge of. They still want to open the cafe by the end of the year. I know it's an ambitious timeline. There's a lot to do, even just work on the building itself.
Yeah.
Like all the windows are being replaced, and the sidings being repainted and stuff like that. So, but that's their goal. And then as far as our involvement, I think just given how busy everything is, we maybe want to wait on that. But I think I'm going to be having a conversation soon with Kathleen about things like this and where our role can play into it. So I'll test the waters when I talk to her, and that'll be probably within the next week or week and a half.
Great, thank
Yeah,
you.
of
I know
course.
I haven't been around, so any way I can support you now that I'm back.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
Well, that definitely looks like somebody's pictures from World War II, given the equipment and all.
Right, yeah.
But do you think it's in Camden? Because it could be, just training anywhere.
Yeah,
I don't see any identifying
No, I think it's
One
probably
picture
somewhere
that
else,
shows
but
some
I,
mountains in the background.
mountains.
yeah,
Camden Hills.
right. Probably.
Iwo Jima.
No, this is the former Bagel Cafe space on the corner of Mechanic and Washington.
Okay, great. Thank you, Danny.
Yeah, thank you.
And Rhonda, do you have anything you want to report?
I
on?
don't have a lot.
Okay.
I've not really dug much deeper.
Yeah.
Although I did get to look online, Janet, right?
Yes.
Yeah. At the Camden Rockport Historical Society documents, that a lot of them are digital, which is really great. And that's where I found that painting.
The painting was amazing.
42 High Street. So my intention at this point is to get over there and really see what you all have, if I can get your help in arranging something like
I'm
that.
not involved with them anymore.
Oh, okay.
So.
What would you
You'll have to
suggest?
Talk to, well, you could talk to Allison or
Oh, Allison, of course.
Susan Ryder.
Mhm. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
But they do have the archives at the Walsh Center.
Yes.
Too. I think I talked to.
Well, I have gone through that and have Rosalie's reports and all.
Nice.
Sort of the history of how that all came about. But, so are you saying you don't have actual holdings at the Historical Society?
No, I have no idea what they have.
Okay. Okay, but they have some things online, so it must
Great.
be somewhere.
Thank you for continuing to move that forward. Yes, Pat?
I was just going to say, I'd like to go over with you because I
Okay.
have some stuff to do there too.
All right.
Cool. Brian, thank you so
Well-
much for moving everything forward.
Sure.
Anything- Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm continuing to post on Facebook and Instagram, and like what you include in that email, I put that in. And I do have a question about do you want to be quoted by name, or do you prefer I just put, like, if Rhonda has a good line or Danny has a good line, do you want me to say, that it came from you, or?
In the minutes? you
Yeah,
mean?
in social media.
Oh,
In social
social
media, not
media.
the minutes.
As opposed to like,
Some people like to have their names out on social media, and some people would rather not.
as opposed to crediting it to the Historic Resources Committee or
Right.
just
Because
anonymous?
it isn't coming from me personally, right? It's coming from the committee.
Mhm.
But I could say, as Danny Salmon pointed out, or I don't know, do you have an opinion about that?
I like putting my personal opinion is to put some gravitas around the committee itself and then make the committee seem active. So as much attribution to the committee itself rather than an individual would, I don't know, unless, the cloud of having Danny's name. I don't know.
I have no strong opinion either way. And I don't have much of a social media presence myself, so it wouldn't make a difference to me.
Okay.
Unless you see
I
value
don't
one way or
really
the
have
other.
a social media presence.
Okay.
So I would I agree with you, the committee is.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to brag, but I've got like 17 followers. So.
And they're all family members.
And over the next couple of weeks, I'm planning to put in every post at the end, vote yes on Article 7 on the town
yes.
ballot
Okay.
on November 5th. And I also mentioned in the last post that, we'll have the election day table and drop by to talk about it if you want.
Nice. That's awesome.
So let me
Great.
ask you something. So I did find that in the archives of the Historical Society happened to be 42 High Street, that painting.
Oh, yeah.
Can we just, could I just send it to you? Am I
Yeah.
allowed to just publish it someplace else and say, oh, we just had a,
I think it's public domain at this point. Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
I think if you say where it came from,
right.
yeah.
That was actually another question I had, like the History Center at the library. If there were images, can I use those in social
At the
media? if I say
library?
Where it's from?
Right? That's public library, right?
The copyright resides with the original photographer. And if it's older than 1928, it's public domain automatically. Between now and then, it's iffy. For fair use, you can use pretty much anything. But as long as you credit the Walsh History Center at the Camden Public Library, it's fine.
Okay. All right, sounds good.
There have been postings fairly recently, I've noticed on Facebook.
Okay.
From the Historical Society who are Walsh.
Yeah, okay.
Awesome.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I have to go.
Okay.
So I could either finish up the minutes by looking at the video, or
Mm.
somebody else could take over for me at this point.
I say the video would be fantastic. I don't think we're going to go that much longer. So,
Okay.
Okay. Any Curtis Island updates? I know you've had some significant milestones.
Well, just kind of a few points here. So here's the report that was done by Historic Building Architects. And that has now, I left copies with Jeremy this last week with a cover letter from me to go to the select board. It's kind of a transmittal. So here it is. It's public. I would like, and it includes also the estimates, the cost estimates. So it's the full, everything we got. So select board members should have that. We'll probably, on our website,
It's
we'll
on
go.
the website.
Well, no, it's not on the website yet.
It will be though.
Summary, yeah, we'll put it on the website. Something that could go on the town website, our website here, yeah. Okay. I consulted with Mike Johnson. He's giving me updates on grants and whatnot that might be available. And Mike Johnson's with the state Maine Historic
Thank you, Brian.
Preservation Commission. Completed a preliminary design for access to the island. I talked with the Harbor Committee, and then what we need, a critical point for us is we've got to have access to the island. If we're going to do any work there, right now, you can't haul anything up the steps. And so we've got a design. I worked with Bill Bill at
Rockport Steel.
Rockport Steel.
Glover.
Bill Glover, thank you, Pat. And he came out to the island, and so we've got some preliminary ideas. It's going to have to go through a permitting, and I'm going to work with Jeremy on that, or have been.
What is the latest on the reuse of the dock that
Well,
floating-
the assumption is we'll be able to use those.
Okay.
Those, and, but with that, we're developing a memorandum of agreement between the foundation, the Curtis Island Lighthouse Foundation, and the town that will identify who's doing what and who owns what and who's controlling what and who's supporting, financially or in kind. So that's in a draft mode, and we're hoping to advance it to the select board or through Audra's office and then the select board. We've raised, with the different things we've done so far, over $100,000. And we've had.
This year.
This year.
Wow.
And some last year. So it's
That's
coming,
amazing.
but
That's
the
amazing.
cost of this is pretty big. And when you see the report, just remember, it was their cost estimates based on going out for contracts on everything. And we know there's a big volunteer, there's a big in-kind resource here. So, I don't want people to get scared by the numbers.
Well, even if you have a volunteer crew to do some of this restoration work, you still have to have somebody who's going to be in charge of it,
Yes, yep.
Yeah. No, it's just
Yeah. And
pieces of it.
what we're thinking is some of the volunteer work can, it's pretty obvious volunteers can do it, but the brickwork, the rock work, the stonework, the finished carpentry, that needs to be done with appropriately skilled.
Well, I was thinking like a contractor.
Yeah, contract. Yeah, yeah. Let's see, communities. We want to hold community visioning sessions, 1 or 2, if we can have one before Christmas. I haven't set those up, but it's where 20 to 30 community members would come together and talk about their picture. How do they like to see the lighthouse, 5 years from now? And that will help inform what we do in terms of, do we put full plumbing and electric in it, or do we keep it absolutely primitive, more primitive than when it was originally built? That's the way it is today. Establishing a committee to work on the island history, and Rhonda and Roger Moody, we're going to have a preliminary meeting tomorrow, and it'll be to kind of scope out, what's available historically on the island. And Ken, in his previous role, has a nice organization of material, but what's not is what's not there. What's in the Coast Guard archives?
Yeah.
What can we dig that's out there? What do community members have that we haven't pulled in or tapped into? So what we want to do is let's come up with a plan on how we approach it, not any particular fact. Let's see, I did a grant request for $25,000 to the Maine Lighthouse Trust. Just submitted that last week. And that will help pay for the access to the island. And there's got to be some way to get equipment up on the island, and probably not helicoptering it in, although that would work if someone provided free transport. Let's see. And we have a cleanup this October 12th coming up this weekend. I have probably 8 or 10 people, still room for a couple more. We're starting at about 8:20. There'll be a boat leaving from Steamboat Landing around 8:20 and another one at 8:40. And it'll last through early afternoon or noon. If people want to come back at noon, that's fine.
We used that volunteer list from the last election and what people wrote. We didn't necessarily, we sent it out to everybody who either had light carpentry skills or brush work and tree cutting and just cleanup skills. Those are the people that we sent it to. I think you had about 12 or 15 responses.
And the island is really overgrown in the last probably 10 years. I don't think anything's hardly been cut back. And the Coast Guard has, they need to have a 300-degree free light exposure. And I'll probably have them come out and say, what do we need to do? Because it'll be taking some trees down that have established themselves.
And you also are going to have a tree inventory done.
Yeah, and having a kind of a plan done, because there's a lot of invasive stuff there as well.
Is that your phone?
Yes.
Oh,
That's all.
I was wondering, sorry.
Do you have somebody who will do the tree inventory, like someone who knows what's what?
Yeah, if there are recommendations, let me know. We haven't hired anyone, and we're trying to get an expert to volunteer time to do that. And we've got a couple of ideas.
If you know any volunteer tree experts, let us know.
All right, I'll think about that.
It's interesting. People always have had a love affair with lighthouses. I mean, they're just so iconic.
They're
And
very romantic.
it seems like in the last 3 weeks, 4 weeks, I just keep seeing lighthouses more than ever in the news and restoration stories. Like they're just,
I think they're at this point of, you know,
They're all at
turning
a
point,
tipping
whether
point.
we're preserving them or
Mhm,
letting
right.
them deteriorate.
Yeah.
Mike, is there some place on the island where you can dump the brush and just let it?
Well, that's the approach that they've been using, and the wood is filled with brush that's
You can't walk through the
kindling.
woods.
Yeah, I mean, some of it piled tightly is going to rot easier, faster. So that's what we've been, just continuing that. But I think we need to get a brush, what do you call it? Brush mulcher.
Chipper.
Chipper, yeah.
Wow.
Get a chipper there and chip stuff up, and then it can be used on trails. Plus, it'll digest itself faster too. So there's anything you look at it, there are 10 opportunities to do something.
Okay. I know Will is still in the afterglow of his wedding. So no report on the natural landmark. The wedding without, oh, shoot. When did it end? All right, well. All right, well, we can take that as a cue. Not everything else here, I think, can be tabled and pushed forward. Unless somebody else has something they want to talk about, I think we're good to dismiss the meeting. Anyone else? Okay, meeting adjourned.
So everything from 6 on, we.
Just
talk about
table
next
that.